morning, everyone. It is 9:33. Welcome back to CW Iowa Live. Lou, along with meteorologist James Peterson and Maestro Joseph Junta in studio with us as we are all gearing up to say goodbye to 2016 and hello to 2017.
Yeah, no kidding.
But this time, we're going to be doing something in a way that is most unique because people are going to be able to celebrate New Year's my way.
Exactly, yeah.
Or your way, or anyone's way.
Exactly.
No, we're talking about Blue Eyes.
We are, yeah. And, you know, this guy, Frank Sinatra, his career spanned over 60 years. Now, just think about that for a second. Started back in the swing era in the 1940s and went all the way through the mid-1990s. And remarkable talent, Hollywood movie star as well as producer and great singer. And you know, there's a couple of reasons, I think, Lou, that his career spanned that far. First of all, you can't fake talent, you know, so that's talent is always the test of time, you know, so that's one thing I think that's remarkable. But there are a couple of things that were incredibly unique about Sinatra and how he's sustained a career for that long and continued to be appealing to record companies and worldwide audiences. One was his tremendous vocal timbre, you know, there's a sound that he had that nobody else could duplicate. Part of that was that RCA invented a microphone for him. You know those old bullet mics?
The big ones, yeah.
That's right. Well, there were two of them that he used, one in the early 40s when he started recording and then one later, and he used those most of his life that created that rich intermediate sound, middle range sound in his voice. The other thing is that he had a tremendous ability to tell a story. And with any singer, whether it's you know, Madonna or Britney Spears or Tony Bennett and people like that.
Right.
If you could tell a story musically, it really hits the hearts and minds of people.
Because you're touching people.
That's exactly right. And the guy that we have coming in, whose name is Steve Lipia, he's a Las Vegas star, he has that same kind of talent. He's a tremendous storyteller. Sinatra, you know, could put you at a certain time, at a certain place when he sang a song. And that's exactly the talent that Lipia has too.
But this guy is not doing Frank Sinatra impersonation. He just, you know, reminds you.
That's
of
right.
Sinatra.
He is not a Sinatra impersonator.
Right.
But his voice is similar. His phrasing is similar. His intonation is, you know, as good or better than Sinatra's was. And again, he's a great storyteller. So tremendous interpreter. And there he is there. And the other thing about this guy is that through a friend of a friend, he was able to get most of those great Frank Sinatra arrangements. So those by Don Costa, Neil Hefti, and Gordie Jenkins, they're all his, and he's the only performer that can use them.
Are you serious?
No, so
people that are really into the Sinatra era and
Yep.
to Sinatra, like the authentic Sinatra music, are going to be able to experience it.
That's exactly right. When Capitol Records first signed Sinatra in the 1950s, one of the deals in the contract was that he had to have a 40-piece orchestra behind him to record. And not only is this a 40-piece orchestra, now we're going to use an 80-piece orchestra.
There you go, you're going to double it.
And as you guys probably know, it's a little bit difficult for classical musicians to swing. You know, that's a genre all itself. So some of my musicians, of course, play jazz and play in clubs and whatnot and know what they're doing in terms of popular music. But we've hired about 6 or 8 people from the Turner Center Jazz Orchestra, so they're going to help us be able to create the style and be very authentic about it.
Now, how difficult is it for you to be involved in something like this?
Well, it's, you know, it's a show, and it's the pacing is a lot different than what we're used to in classical music. You know, I tell our musicians when I'm rehearsing them that when you're doing a Beethoven symphony, you get 5 2.5-hour rehearsals to decide on tempo and phrasing and everything else that goes into it. In this particular case, you got to make about 10 times more quick decisions in only 2 rehearsals. So you really got to be on your toes.
You're only rehearsing twice before this?
Two times, yeah.
Oh,
so you
wow.
really have to be on your toes and know what you're doing. But Steve's great, the arrangements are great, our musicians will be wonderfully prepared, they're professional, and I'll meet with Steve for about an hour.
That was my next question, yeah. When will you have him there?
Yeah, tomorrow he'll come in for about an hour rehearsal with me in private, and then we'll pull in the musicians at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and then 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So we'll put it all together pretty quickly. The first rehearsal is what we call a working rehearsal, where we stop and start a lot, be certain that things are in tune and relatively together. the second rehearsal, we just run the show and try to get some pacing to it. And, that's the other thing that I love about Lipia is that it's got some great images of Sinatra. So not only will you hear so much of his music, but there'll be a big screen hung over the orchestra, so you'll be able to see a lot of these vintage Sinatra shots.
And we're going to obviously get all the classic Sinatra tunes, I hope.
Going to get all of them, including what you mentioned, New York, New York, My Way, That's Life, Strangers in the Night, Old Man River, and some great ballads, and a few pieces that he sang in his Vegas shows early in his career that he then reinvented in the 1990s. One tune, a ballad called The House I Live In, which is absolutely gorgeous, that he's going to sing. So it's going to be a great night for everyone.
Sounds amazing.
People are going to really enjoy themselves.
They sure are.
And it sounds like it's something, this type of entertainment is probably great for everybody.
Well, what's very cool about all this is that we've only got about 200 tickets left. The Civic Center seats 2,700, and it's amazing to me that this music is still as appealing as it was 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
We listen to it all, my wife and I listen to it all the time.
Yeah.
We're cooking with Prince Sinatra on, and it's timeless.
Yeah, he's an American icon, and that sound absolutely is timeless. It's a great word for it, and I'm just excited and Steve is a great guy. I mean, he's fun. He's got a wonderful sense of humor as well as a great personality, so we're eager to see it. And I'll tell you another story. I had the chance to see Sinatra live three times in my life. Yeah, once in Vegas when I was a teenager at the Desert Inn.
I was going to ask you where. Okay.
Yeah. Once in New York City, which if you were to ask me what are your 5 live musical events that are the highlights in your life, this would be number 1. Out of all the classical music, this would be number 1. Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, and the Count Basie Orchestra. December 31st, 1969, the year that I graduated from high school, at the Uris Theater in New York City, midnight. So the show, he did 2 shows, one at 8 and one at midnight. We heard the Revelers outdoors at Times Square. The doors were open to the theater, and he came in with Ella and the Count Basie Orchestra. It was spectacular. A 3 1/2 hour show that night.
Oh, wow.
It was unforgettable, memorable. And then the third time was in a recording studio. RCA had a recording studio in Camden, New Jersey, which was only about 15 miles from where I grew up. I was studying with some members of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Sinatra was recording with them, and I got a chance to sneak in and see him record. Yeah, it was really something. And
so this is really going to be special for you too. It's going to take you down memory road.
Absolutely. I've been a fan of his for years and years and years. I'll tell you one more quick story.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I had a professor at Northwestern he was a conducting professor, and he said, you know, Joe, you're not a singer, so you need to learn how to breathe, how to phrase. And you do that 2 ways, by watching instrumentalists teach. So I would bang on the professor's doors that were teaching trumpet and trombone and violin and see how they phrased and how they taught. But he said, you also got to go to a singer and learn how a singer breathes. So I knocked on a professor's door whose name was Walter Carringer, became a great friend, and he said to me after I was watching a couple lessons, he said, what are you looking for? I said, well, I want to learn how to phrase, how to breathe. And he gave me a list. He said, here, go and listen to these 3 albums, all Frank Sinatra albums. Go and listen to them in the library and come back next week and we'll talk about phrasing. And that's what opened it up for me. He had a tremendous breath control, and he was one of the first singers that was not. We usually deal in 4 measures and 4 measures and 4 measures with pop music, commercial music. He could deal in 8 measures, 12 measures, 11 measures, 16 measures.
And if you think about it, think about his breath.
That's right. Yeah. That tremendous breath control. He was a great swimmer. Not many people know that he swam almost every day of his life, which created good lung capacity. He was a classical music lover, devotee. He loved Ravel and Debussy and Beethoven. And most of all, he studied with classical musicians, including Luciano Pavarotti, the great tenor.
Seriously?
An Italian tenor. They were good friends, and he took vocal license from him for several years.
Wow. But big event happening here. Let's give all the details here.
Yep.
As to what's going on, because only a handful of tickets left, so you want to get them.
Right. Saturday night, 8 o'clock at the Civic Center, Greater Des Moines. It's New Year's Eve pops, Sinatra at 100 and beyond.
There you go. 8 o'clock is showtime, and bring in the new year. What better way than this?
Oh, perfect.
This is wonderful. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you
very
buddy.
much. Yeah,
Thank you so much. We will be right back.